Okay, hello everybody. I love it when people respond back, hello, I know it's post lunch. Hello everybody, it's so good to see you all. I'm so excited to be here. And, I've been asked to do this really difficult thing, and talk about this thing called cultural safety. Now, who knows anything about cultural safety at all? Oh, come on. Really? No, you look smiles, I know you do. But the interesting thing is that cultural safety has been around for a very, 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 very long time. And many of our institutions and organisations have got programs for cultural safety. Many of you have probably done short courses on cultural safety or mandatory requirements for your job. And one of the things I always say in programs around cultural safety and cultural competence is, you need to pay respects to traditional owners of country. And that's certainly something I do with the Wurundjeri people today, and I recognise that I'm on their country. And who enjoyed the beautiful dancing this morning and the lovely extended explanation that we got? Yeah, I thought that was absolutely terrific. And the challenge for us all to get real about sharing a little bit of oneself when doing acknowledgement of country, so it doesn't sound like 15 words in a sentence that one must do, but rather to really come from the heart and recognise that the country you're on is an extraordinary place. And I also thought that I might describe the slides that I have here. I'm a little bit disappointed to note that the hearing loop's not working in here, and for those of us who are wearing hearing aids, a few of us are sort of sitting around the place now out there looking at the live stream with earbuds in, right, because that's pretty close to the only way you can hear it. I'm also aware there are some blind folk or people who have got legal blindness or near to that, and there may be some people online who do that. So I will do my best to be universally accessible. I'm hoping that you've got your closed captions operating. I wasn't able to get that done. So the slide that we're looking at now is a beautiful map of Australia, and it's the IATSIS map, which shows in principle the many, many different mobs that make up this glorious place today we call Australia, that we all call home. That has been a place always of knowledge and of learning. And there's some beautiful words at the side of this map that shows at least 350 different mobs in different colours of Australia. And of course, unlike many maps, include Tasmania and the islands of the Torres Strait. And the words on the side say basically, there was not, nor is there any part of Australia that was not known by the peoples of this place. Country's been held close for millennia and offers a history rich and textured to those who wish to know. This is the truth. This country's always been known, and there's no other way of describing it. And quite frankly, if you can understand that and take that into your body, heart and soul, and recognise that if you call this place home, then you have a responsibility to know how to express that. You have rights and obligations, but you have a responsibility to know how to do that. And that was a lovely way that we got called to that task this morning from the wonderful dancers. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. Today, I'm hoping to quickly dance through vision, collaborative synergies, and a few examples of how we can do that in the context of what we are as a sector on a land, on a place that's always been a place of knowledge exchange and of learning. On the right-hand side of that slide is a beautiful, beautiful plant. Now, I'm sure you've seen these plants all over the place. So it's a Xanathea. Where I come from in Sydney, it's called a gaddy plant. Gadigal are the name of the people of the country that I work on, that I was born on and that I live on. So Gadigal. So gaddy is the name of that plant and gal means people. That is the most extraordinary tree because there's 29 different species of it in Australia, and Australia is the only place in the whole wide world that has that plant. And so whatever countries you've travelled to us from today, if you've travelled here, you will have one of these plants. It's very specific to the area that you're in, and my challenge to you is find out what it is, because it's a pretty groovy story about these things, and Aboriginal people use these plants for many, many different things. On the next slide, I talk a little bit about our vision and my vision of us as a sector. And my talk today will be a very brief one at a fairly high level, because I want you to think about what it is to be a leader on this land, to be a leader of a sector, to leave a legacy for those who will come after us. We heard from the students earlier, and quite frankly, the students are our future. They're the ones that are growing into what we are now. They are the ones that we're going to be leaving a huge number of legacies for. You know, we've already talked about the environment, we've already talked about sustainability, we're talking about our sector. We're leaving a lot of responsibility for them, and how we prepare them, and by the footsteps we take and the leadership and the mentoring that we offer, will give us an opportunity of really setting the place up well. And quite frankly, from many of the young students that are in this room today, and from those that we saw earlier on today, I think we're in fairly good hands, and I'm grateful for that. But basically, the vision is, as I see it, is through our shared responsibilities to the Aboriginal lands on which our sectors stand and thrive, we must create a genuine sense of belonging amongst all. We must demonstrate visible leadership by fulfilling our social contract with Australia's first people. If you look at it a slightly different way, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are less than 5% of the entire population of Australia today. In 1788, of course, we were 100% of the population, right? And so for one of the world's wealthiest nations to not be able to grip up some of the challenges, a first world nation at that, for a tiny proportion of the population, recognising that education has one of the biggest impacts on health. I don't know about you, but I am ashamed. I think we need to do better, and if anyone was giving us a scorecard right now, we would definitely be reading very carefully the advice at the bottom of that scorecard. But we are in a fairly lucky position because there are a number of synergies that I just wanted to talk about, and a number of lenses that we can look at these synergies through. So this slide has got a picture of a gaddi tree. Again, this is a representation of that beautiful grass plant. And this has been done by a wonderful artist called Luke Penrith. And he did that, and that is a very important icon for us, because it's a tree and a plant that represents so many things. It provides food, it provides medicine, it provides warmth when it's burning, and it provides us with access to knowing what season it was and what is coming. And so there's lots of stories around that, and that reminds me of the lenses that we need to look at our work through. One of them is around practicing our values, understanding what our values are, recognising that all of our organisations have got value statements of some sort, and many of us have fed into value statements across many organisations, and many of them are fairly similar. But how do we individually own those values and manifest them in our day-to-day work? When we talk about compassion, when we're dealing with each other, and I think the last speakers were absolutely right, you know, COVID's taught us a lot about each other's families, home lives, pets, but also about some of the things of the extraordinary stuff that we can do when we band together in times of great adversity. Who would have thought we would have been able to get nearly everything across the country online in a matter of weeks when COVID hit? That was a remarkable effort of our sector. And I think that opportunity to be able to pull together again is certainly right in front of us. So looking at our values. So there was a value to be there for each other, to have each other's back, and to care for each other, particularly for our students. Secondly is how we can look at multiple knowledges and recognise that there is not one revealed truth. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been here for 60,000 plus years through extraordinary things, the oldest continuous culture in the world. Can you imagine the changes that this place has had? The changes that the world has gone through before Moses was a boy. I mean, I don't know what your belief systems are, but Aboriginal people have been here for far, far longer than I think most of our minds can even imagine what that would look like. So there's got to be some knowledge there. And it's only in recent times where people have been asking Aboriginal people, well, what is this thing about traditional fire practices? Why is it you fellas could grow grain and you've got one of the oldest grain growing practices in the world and we didn't really know about it until now? I mean, there's all of these questions out there, and many of us scratch our heads and say, well, you know, why didn't you ask? Or if you did ask, why weren't your ears on? Because often half the challenge is about how we listen. And I think that's a really tough ask for all of us experts in the room, right? Really hard to ask us to listen. And then, of course, the third thing is about how we care for our places, how we're centering Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander knowledges at the very middle of our organisations. I'll put it another way. When people come to Australia, let's just imagine we're thinking about our international students. They come to Australia because we have a fabulous education system. We have a brilliant university sector, we know that. But they're also coming to Australia because they want to learn about Australia. They want to do the barbies, they want to do the surfing, they want to do the walking in remote regions, they want to be able to ski, and they want to be able to, like Australia is a really unique place. They want to shoo the kangaroos out of the backyard in the morning. Oh, I don't know. But they come here because they want to have an Australian experience. And I know some of you have come here from St elsewhere, and there's a few good reasons why you've done that. And one of them would be because of the impression that Australia has left on you, or your understanding of Australia as a place to live and to bring up your kids and to have your families. And it's really important that we say, well, the university sector of this nation has actually come out of the geography of this land. I come from Sydney University, right? And the story about Sydney University is a pretty simple one. The people of the early colony didn't want to keep sending their young men, and they were nearly always men, across a perilous ocean on a long journey to do an education in England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and where else, and then hope that they'll come back and survive the journey and be ready to practice their professions or whatever it is they've learnt there and contribute to this small nation. They said, no, we're mature enough now. And so, of course, Australia's first university was born. It was very soon after many other universities came about. And today, as we've heard earlier, we're a very, very big sector in this land. We have some of the largest universities in the whole wide world. And we do extraordinary things. We are punching way above our weight on a global level. We're provisioning the most extraordinary knowledge. And now we've got this real opportunity of having those conversations about what is it to be a sector on a land that's always been a place of knowledge exchange? How do we need to be? How do we need to listen? How do we need to learn? How do we need to contribute to this sector with pride and joy that we are extraordinary and that other parts of the world want more of what we have? Does that make sense? Is this true, what I'm saying? Yeah, and I'm really proud of our Australian university sector. And I just wish sometimes we just take that little chip off our little shoulders and just stand proud and say, yeah, we do have a huge amount to offer, because we know that to be true. Some of the synergies that we want are both in outcomes and processes, and one of them is about the relationships between what lifelong learning is, what research is and what education is, and how no matter who we are and how senior we are in an organisation, that there is always an opportunity to learn something new and to learn something differently and to understand stuff that we thought we always knew about. And sometimes I think that's probably one of the hardest things. When people say to you, I don't know how many educators are in the room, when a student says to you, oh yeah, I already know that, what happens to that student's learning? It stops because they already know it, right? So they're thinking about something else or doing something else. If you're really good at what you're doing, and if you can notice that and say, no, there may be something new here for you, just suspend your knowledge for a moment and listen to this in a new way. That can be incredibly helpful. And this is one of the things that we have to do with our university executives, our university leadership, of course to our governing bodies and our peaks. There is a lot more that we can do and that we should do, and many of those voices will be coming from our students, be coming from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, certainly coming from our communities and coming from each other. And if we have the opportunity to really grip that up and listen, I think we could go a long, long way. There's a couple of other things that this will take as well, apart from all of these voices and the ability for us to be able to sit down and listen with love and respect to each other. There's also the whole opportunity about courage and tenacity, actions, not just words. I don't know about you, but I've seen 1,000,001 action plans built over the last 30 or 40 years, and very, very few of them have been successful. And I think it's time for us to really make sure there's resourcing behind it. And so whatever action plans you do, whatever reconciliation programs that you run, whatever voice programs you run, you have to make absolutely certain that there are the human resources behind it to make that so. On the next slide, I talk a little bit about how and what governance is. So governance is a critical part of incorporated organisations and really does need to be reframed a little bit. And part of that governance is how we can care for country, how we can look after country, how we can acknowledge country, and how we can recognise that country has been here for 60,000 years. Will it be here for another 60,000 years to sustain us? That's a question, you know, and that's something that we need to consider in all of our governance mechanisms. How we can make sure we celebrate and attend to cultural matters, share resources and pass on knowledge appropriately. Recognise the way consultations occur and sometimes those harder conversations. I know certainly in my world some of the conversations we have with community are very, very difficult, but that doesn't mean we should run away from them and not continue to host them, because we've always got to get to a resolution. Because after all, without community, without our students, without our staff, then what purpose do we have in being? The way people are acknowledged, honoured and included in matters involving them, the important matters of family, community, business and life. So we've heard plenty from previous speakers about how sometimes decisions are made for people and somehow imposed upon them. And it's little wonder we get a little bit of pushback and resistance, or, you know, perhaps not involvement or engagement in some of those decisions. Governance occurs absolutely everywhere, whether it's formally or informally, and good governance is actually the responsibility of us all, not only the leadership, but absolutely everyone within an organisation. If something is not working for you, then it's your role to let people know that it's not working for you and try to be proactive and possibly even offer some solutions. Often asking people, how do you think we should fix that? They'll often come out with a solution, so it's really important to get on the front foot with that. When we talk about culture and leadership, there are about 9 different things that we need to pay attention to, and these, you know, it's sort of like a 9-point sort of process around what is thoughtful practice. And for me, it's about knowing the country that you're on, understanding the story of the land, understanding the story of how your university started, for example, in our contexts, how it is we can work to improve relations, because at the end of the day, that's all that's really important, is how we relate to each other and how we care for each other. How we value cultures, and there's many of them. Amongst Aboriginal people, there are a lot of different cultures. Amongst all of us, I'd guaranteed however many people there are in this room, there are at least that many cultures in this room. But it's how we, you know, are so comfortable in our own skins that we can then have respect for each other's cultures. And that's a really important part of some of the work that we're doing at my university through the National Centre of Cultural Competence. It's not about Aboriginal Affairs 101. It's about how staff in particular can feel comfortable in their own skin when they're working with people who are from a culture different from them. And this applies just as evenly to a lecturer in a business school where 50% of the class are international students. How do you, as a person not from that culture, engage and interact with people from another culture? And COVID certainly taught us, as was mentioned earlier, that, you know, some of the most difficult times were for those international students who were onshore, because we had to pull out a lot of packages to support them, because hunger and being chucked out of your apartment was a very, very real thing for so many. How we share history, how we can sit down and enjoy each other's story, and how we can learn from each other's story no matter how difficult that history is. How we deal with inequality and how we see equity and inequality and determination and discrimination for what all of those things are, subtly different but often applied against particular people. So it's how we deal with that within ourselves and how we start thinking the questions of, is there something I'm missing here? Have I got a bias that I'm not really aware of? Do I understand what it would be to be in that person's shoes? right? So these are sorts of things that we ask ourselves. Certainly in the world that I'm from, out of home care and custodial levels, this is a massive gap in Aboriginal Australia, where today there are more children by proportion and numbers growing up in out-of-home care than ever. There's more prisons being built because custodial levels are going through the roof, and this is an absolutely dreadful circumstance in our nation. Jails are not good for people. Very few people come out of jail reformed, right? And many of our prisons across all of our jurisdictions don't have good programs of practice where someone can earn a degree or earn a certificate for, or become a carpenter or a baker, or do something that will give them real hands-on skills for when they are finally released, when they've done their time, where they can go back into society as an active contributor to that society. That's a very, very rare story, and it's one that I think as a nation we're old enough and mature enough that we should be able to address it. And as a sector as powerful as we are, we have a real opportunity of getting some of these decisions made, because remember, we grow the lawyers, we grow the judges, right? We grow the people who work in those systems, we grow the social workers. We are a very powerful sector, right? We can change their minds from the inside out from the minute a student sits in one of our classrooms. Does that make sense? Yeah, I mean, we've got a really responsible job, and we may not see changes in the next few years, but we certainly can across generations. So I think it's time for us to really start thinking about what that looks like, and that's why that's included here. Destiny. This is a very Daggy thing. Often people will argue the toss. At the moment, we've got a big discussion about voice, yeah? And there's lots and lots going on about the referendum. Lots of people have their opinions. Some people are saying, oh, you've got to do this first before you do that. Oh, no, we've got to get everything all tied up and we've got to know the exact process, blah, blah, blah. And I think there just has to be an opportunity for us to say, stop, let's get the referendum through. Let's pretend we've had a big argument and the answer's yes. And you go into that box and you do yes, 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 right? We just have to recognise that there will be a reckoning. There will be a time when Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are able to have the conversations that we need to have the recognition that we need to have the treaty that's way, way, way overdue, have the reckoning that's coming, recognise that if we do it now, we're all here, we're all together. And because I think for the next generations, they're going to have a lot to deal with. They're going to be dealing with problems of sea level rise, food sustainability, wildfires. They've got more problems on their plates over the next 50 years than I think we can even imagine right now. So can we please, I beg you, have a serious think, learn a little bit more about this if you're ambivalent, and please let's try and get this referendum passed in the yes, and let's trust in the process to get the details sorted out following that. Right, so that's what I mean by destiny. It's an important conversation. And of course it goes straight into truth, treaty and voice, and that this is absolutely everyone's business. Also often at our universities, people will often say, oh, that's an Aboriginal Affairs matter, I'll just put it over to the appropriate DVC. There's a couple of DVCs in the room that know exactly what that means. But it's not. The issues that we encounter and experience are dealt with much, much better if we know that we've got a team of the executive behind us and with us at our sides, assisting us and doing everything they can in their powers to make sure our universities are utterly equitable for everybody. And I suppose it sort of comes down to this really cheesy comment, and forgive me for saying this, if we get it right for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, we'll get it right for everybody. Because the needs of Aboriginal people are so vast that if we get things done with a lens of Aboriginal need and expectations and culture, it will embrace all the others that we have in our Australian society. Does that make sense? It's a really good opportunity to think about what that could mean for you and your organisation. On the next slide, I'll just give you a tiny bit of the One Sydney Many People strategy. It's the strategy that we have at the University of Sydney. There are 4 primary parts of it: Narragarawin, Eora, Nara and Pemulwuy. Basically, they mean culture and community, people, education and research, and environment. And these are the pillars of our practice, and this is a practice that we're running across the entirety of the university. An example of how we inculcate Aboriginal worldviews into the mainstream opportunities the university has to offer is by our recently launched sustainability strategy. And on this page I've got a picture of both strategies, the One Sydney Many People strategy and the sustainability strategy. And what we've done is that we've mapped core elements of the One Sydney Many People, or the Aboriginal strategy, across the sustainability strategy. And guess what? They enhance each other, they complement each other, and they make each stronger. And so now, all of a sudden, the sustainability team is working very closely with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander portfolios team, and our team is working very strongly with the sustainability team. The same goes for modern slavery. The same goes for just about every strategy we have at the university now. And that's a very powerful place to be, because we've gone off and said, don't pop us in a silo. That's not the right place for us. We've got to be involved in absolutely everything that the university does and every part of its practice. So that's just a quick example for you. I understand the slides will be distributed to you, so you can have a look at it then. So at the end of the day, governance can't be separated from the traditions of all of our organisations, but it's really up to us to make sure those traditions are spot on for where we need to be into the future. So thank you very much for your time.
There was actually one question online which I'd love to ask you, which is around the extent to which we should embed Indigenous perspectives in the curriculum.
I don't think that's a question anymore. If you don't embed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander materials in the curriculum, not as a little add-on at the end, or not as a special characteristic or feature of your course, but it has to be embedded in absolutely everything that you do in curriculum, then you're losing an amazing opportunity to be able to truly get what it is to be a sector on this particular land. An example, you go to Aotearoa, New Zealand. Are there any Kiwis in the room? Hey, yeah, so you walk into that, you look at any map of the curriculum, you do any course, and there is no doubt whatsoever where you are and what's involved in that curriculum and the views that have gone into that curriculum. Now, we're big enough and mature enough, just like New Zealand is, to be able to do that as well. We have a lot to offer. The other thing is that many of our accreditation bodies are also expecting us to have Aboriginal stuff in all of our courses. I'm with the Australian Medical Council. I'm a Professor of Public Health. I'm in the Faculty of Medicine on my other job. And one of the things that we do with all of our medical schools is that there are 3 out of the 7 standards that are heavily, heavily weighted with Indigenous content now. You cannot be a medical school in this country without getting that right. So it is only a matter of time. Remember, I was talking about destiny before. Just imagine we've had an argument and we've won. That's what you need to do. So yeah, there's no question whatsoever. It's time. It's way overdue, and I'm grateful for the question. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.